Thousands of Venezuelans have marched on the Angostura Bridge to demand a peaceful resolution to the political situation in their country. The president of the National Constituent Assembly led the march along with the governor of Bolivia state. Together, they strongly rejected U.S. meddling in their internal affairs. They were also joined by members of the Bolivarian armed forces who are prepared to defend their country from a military invasion. Public transport drivers also rallied in Caracas to support President Nicolás Maduro. Chanting and holding banners, the drivers say they support the democratically elected president, who's a former bus driver himself. Demonstrators also call for peace and demand an end to intervention attempts in their country.
We are supporting our President Nicolás Maduro for peace because we want peace. We are people of peace. As taxi drivers with our President, we are moving forward. We march to ask that supplies for our cars are allowed to reach us right away, as it should always be.
We are victims of the North American Empire's fascist intentions to destroy our Bolivarian revolution. And we, in response, answer with songs of peace.
Speaking at an event at the state of Miranda, the Venezuelan president has said the alleged humanitarian aid being forced on the country by the United States is an insignificant amount compared to what the government gives citizens each month.
In one day, we distribute 300,000 club boxes, which are the government's food distribution system. That means almost 4,500 tons a day. In one day, we give away more supplies than their false humanitarian aid in total. They have offered 270 tons, which is 6% of one day. Are Venezuelans going to live with that?
Maduro also spoke directly to Colombian President Iván Duque and asked him to start taking care of Colombia's internal affairs.
Yo le digo al presidente de Colombia, Iván Duque,
Mr. Duque, why don't you give humanitarian aid to the thousands of poor people who live in Colombia? There are 20 million people living in poverty who don't have access to work, housing, healthcare, or even food in Colombia. Thousands of people have come to Venezuela due to their internal conflicts. Why doesn't he take care of the internal issues in his country instead of interfering in the internal affairs of Venezuela?
Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez has announced the closing of their maritime and aerial borders with the Dutch Caribbean islands of Aruba, Bonaire, and Curaçao. This comes after the government of Curaçao agreed to serve as a collection center for the so-called humanitarian aid.
Due to the announcement by the government of Curaçao to serve as a collection center for helping forcefully bring in alleged humanitarian aid into our country, we have decided to suspend all private and commercial flights between Venezuela and the islands of Aruba, Curaçao and Bonaire. Therefore, our borders with these three islands are now closed.
Our correspondent in Caracas, Luis Tavera, gives us more details.
The Venezuelan vice president announced the closure of maritime and aerial borders with the islands of Aruba, Bonaire, and Curaçao. Delcy Rodriguez said that the decision was taken to protect the self-determination and sovereignty of the Venezuelan people. She also said that Venezuela and Curaçao had good bilateral relationships in the past, so she does not understand why the island has decided to join the campaign to undermine the Venezuelan government. The vice president also said that the so-called humanitarian aid coming from the U.S. is hypocritical, since on the one hand, they have blockaded at least $30 billion that belong to Venezuela, and on the other, it pretends to give a mere $20 million as humanitarian help. She also said that U.S. plans to intervene in Venezuela have failed. People continue holding mobilizations in Venezuela to support the government of President Nicolás Maduro.
We thank Luis for that report. Venezuela's foreign minister says a group of thieves broke into the Venezuelan embassy in Costa Rica. Jorge Arreaza condemned the incident via Twitter, and he called on Costa Rica's government to follow diplomatic protocols and assure the safety of Venezuelan officials. This comes after Maria Faria, the person illegally appointed as ambassador by the self-proclaimed inter-president Juan Guaidó, tweeted this image. It includes a statement that says, "In the fulfillment of diplomatic functions, we have taken control of the headquarters of the Venezuelan embassy in San Jose." Costa Rica's Deputy Foreign Minister, Lorena Aguilar, has spoken out against the illegal occupation of the Venezuelan embassy, calling it a violation of international agreements.
We regret the unacceptable entry to the Venezuelan embassy in Costa Rica by the diplomatic personnel of self-proclaimed President Juan Guaidó. For the Costa Rican government, this action is unacceptable, for it breaks basic diplomatic norms of respect and trust in international community and, above all, international rights. We express our energetic rejection of the intervention from diplomatic representative Maria Farias, who has not respected the diplomatic term of 60 days, given by the Costa Rican government to officials from Nicolas Maduro's government to leave the country. For this reason, the Foreign Affairs Minister says that in the next few hours she will send a diplomatic note to Ms. Maria Farias about what has just happened.
The stage is being set in Jamaica for a repurchase of Venezuela's 49% stake in the Petrojam oil refinery. The Senate has approved a bill for the compulsory acquisition of the shares. However, Prime Minister Andrew Holness said that so far no settlement price has been agreed upon with PDVSA and the government of President Nicolás Maduro. To shed more light into this, we spoke with international journalist Dexton McKenzie from CVM television channel in Kingston. Here is what he had to say.
Well, basically what he's saying is that the time is up for negotiations on Venezuela's 49% share in the oil refinery. He noted that, well, he opened the bill on the compulsory acquisition shares in Petrojam Limited Act. He was saying that subsequently that the bill was passed, and Prime Minister said that he would not offer to give Nicolas Maduro administration until it reaches the floor of the Senate for final approval, okay? So, which could be as early as Friday. So we would want to hear from the administration, the Nicolas Maduro administration.
Moving on to Brazil, President Jair Bolsonaro has presented a major pension reform bill in Congress. The plan will require constitutional changes, including a new minimum age for retirement. Workers in Brazil currently don't have an age limit to retire. With the new reform, the minimum retire age will be set at 65 for men and 62 for women. Also, workers will have to contribute to the pension system for 40 years in order to receive their payments. Thousands of people took to the streets on Wednesday to reject this reform.
They want men to retire at 65 and women at 62. In Congress, deputies retire after 2 terms in office. That's after 8 years. So it's us, the people, who are paying.
I have already worked 30 years, but I haven't reached the minimum age the government is planning. I'm going to try and retire now, because I fear that with this reform, I will have to work for at least 12 more years.
And auto workers in Brazil said they will fight to reverse a decision by U.S. automaker Ford to close a plant that employs almost 3,000 people. Ford has been operating the plant in São Bernardo do Campo since 1966. But the company said it now plans to pull out of the commercial heavy truck business in South America. The decision is a blow to corporate agenda of Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro. Experts agree he was unable to keep Ford from shutting down the plant.
When we got in here, we had about 50,000 workers just in this plant. Today, we are around 3,200 employees, so this cut was abrupt. Our workforce has sharply decreased.
News in a minute, stay with us. Welcome back. A constitutional referendum is scheduled to take place in Cuba on Sunday. After months of public consultation, voters will reject or approve the new constitution passed by the National Assembly. Our correspondent Luisa Aute brings us up to date on the preparations.
Yes, good afternoon. Indeed, the National Electoral Commission offered a press conference this morning to show some results of the dynamic test that took place last Sunday. As a result of this, now we know that we have over 24,000 polling colleges in Cuba, but also over 1,000 polling colleges abroad, so the Cuban who lives in other countries can go and vote that important day. But also there are over 400,000 people working in this referendum in the colleges, counting votes, everything. So it's a big number of people working for the referendum. But not everything are good news. According to the Commission, 2.52% of the colleges presented some kind of problems regarding to transportation, communications, personnel, so that's why all the provinces will have to give part to the Commission next Wednesday to say the problems they found, and a day after that they will have a teleconference explaining what they did to fix those problems. This is pretty much what we have now in that matter. We'll be back with more. Back to you.
Left-wing parties from Central America have gathered in Nicaragua for a 3-day event to discuss recent imperialist attacks in the region. We'll have more in this report.
Managua is the venue for the Mesoamerican meeting of left-wing parties, a political event that seeks to strengthen ties of solidarity and friendship across the region.
Maintaining our unity is paramount. Resistance against foreign aggression must be linked to our solidarity. The empire is mobilizing all of their puppets in Latin America, as well as in Europe, in order to undo all the changes parties like ours have achieved.
Solidarity with Venezuela is one of the main topics to be discussed by the 10 different countries from the region which are taking part in this event. A representative from Venezuela's PSUV party says imperialist aggression extends to many different Latin American nations.
Dear comrades, it's not just Venezuela's future which is at stake now. If you think these attacks are isolated to just Venezuela, or Cuba, or Nicaragua, or Bolivia, you are wrong. They are trying to update the Monroe Doctrine to modern times. This is about recolonizing our continent. This is about having their so-called backyard at their mercy.
This event will come to an end on Thursday, and is expected that President Daniel Ortega will give the closing speech.
The Bolivian President Evo Morales has enacted a new law that offers free health care to all citizens that do not have insurance. Our correspondent in Bolivia, Freddy Morales, has more details.
President Evo Morales has enacted the Unified Healthcare System law that will start operating in March. Almost half of the population will benefit from the system, a population that did not have access to free healthcare. 5 million people out of the total population of 11 million Bolivians are expected to use the system. It will have a budget of $200 million per year and will include cancer treatments. 2 million people have registered so far. It is expected that the system will reach the whole population that does not benefit from a current health care program. In Bolivia, only people who have a permanent job do have a healthcare insurance. That is about 2 million people. The Bolivian state provides free health care to infants from 0 to 5 years old and people older than 60 years old. The universal system has been opposed by medical groups, which also oppose the current government. Medical organizations demand an investment of $200 million to start the health program, and they have called for demonstrations on March 6th. Social organizations, on the contrary, support the new system. President Evo Morales said that the program will help the poorest groups and campesinos. Morales also said that whoever opposes this law is opposing the people's right of life.
We thank Freddy for that report. As thousands of wildfires ravage the south of Chile, President Sebastián Piñera has confirmed he will travel on Friday to the Colombia-Venezuelan border, amassing a wave of criticism.
Chile is burning. There are now over 4,500 wildfires that have consumed over 55,000 hectares of land. And yet, President Sebastián Piñera is planning to go to the Colombia-Venezuelan border on Friday, unleashing a wave of criticism in the country.
If there is someone who is not respectful of the law, it is President Piñera. In this case, he is openly violating the United Nations Charter as well as other international agreements like the Vienna Convention, because to recognize a person who was never elected president of Venezuela and to recognize someone here as their official representative is just a bad joke.
However, the Chilean president insists his will be a short trip in order to contribute to a peaceful solution to the political situation in Venezuela.
But on top of that, I will collaborate with the humanitarian aid.
The same humanitarian aid many are clamoring for in the disaster-struck areas in Chile, where 122 aircraft and 7,000 firefighters are trying to control the wildfires. But even so, some have stopped their work to condemn deplorable working conditions.
There is equipment that is obsolete. Our units do not have the suitable amount of equipment to perform their work.
Therefore, rejection of Piñera's trip is coming from all sides, even from those who have continuously attacked the government of Venezuela.
We are afraid that Chile is being ideologically aligned with the side of ignorance. It's concerning that we're taking the side of Trump.
Chile does not need to take this stance. Our country has always supported unity, and now we are meddling in other nations' internal affairs.
It remains to be seen if the president will try to provide solutions to the mounting disasters in his country, or if he will continue to focus on another nation's affairs.
Members of Kenya's LGBTQ community have held prayers ahead of Friday's High Court ruling on decriminalizing homosexuality. Under the current laws, homosexual relationship can be punished with up to 14 years imprisonment. A ruling in favor of the LGBTQ community will help dispel taboo notions and discrimination against sexual minorities. The court's decision could rumble across the African continent.
It is likely that that ruling will be appealed, and then it will probably just go all the way to the Supreme Court.
Nigeria's presidential elections have been postponed to 23rd of February after the initial vote was rescheduled in a last-minute press conference just hours before the polls were due to open. According to the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the cancellation cost the economy $1.5 billion. Earlier, we were joined by Maberu, a lecturer from Nigeria, who gave us his take on the postponed elections.
The political atmosphere right now seems to be very, very tense. And it seems to be very, very tense because members of the ruling class, members of the Nigerian ruling class, since the independence, since 1960, have ensured that whenever, we enter the electionary period, they tend to employ whatever means necessary, to get into power. So they get to entice people with money, they get to entice people with those that are not interested in money. They get to, come up with all sorts of violent, methods in order to ensure that they acquire that political power.
Over 35,000 people gathered in the Democratic Republic of Congo for the 6th edition of the Amani Festival. The three-day festival gave a rare opportunity for both established and upcoming artists to be seen and heard. One of the festival's biggest attractions was Congolese rapper and musician Sebastián who thrilled audiences with his famous blend of genres that mixes rap and Congolese folklore.
As artists, we are tasked with selling a positive image of Goma. Even though it's a city that has been a victim to many conflicts and wars, people should not keep the same image of Goma forever. We have to change that.
Time for a second break. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome back. Russian President Vladimir Putin has criticized what he called illegal U.S. sanctions against his and other countries. Putin made the remarks during his 15th State of the Nation address.
Russia will be forced to deploy weapons that can be used not only against the territories that threaten us directly, but also against the decision-making centers that are behind the missile systems which threaten us. We are not interested in confrontation, and we do not want it, let alone confrontation with such a global power like the United States of America. But it looks like our partners do not see how and at what pace the world is changing, and in which direction it's going. They continue their destructive and obviously wrongful politics. It hardly matches the interests of the U.S. themselves. But it's not up to us to decide.
The French film By the Grace of God, which tells the story of child sex abuse in the Catholic Church, has premiered in Europe despite a failed attempt to censor it. The film is about 3 boys who claim priest Bernard Peyat in the Diocese of Lyon abused them in the 1970s and 90s. Peyat tried to postpone the film's release due to his upcoming trial for the abuse, but his plea was thrown out by the court.
A production from France.
And with this story, we come to the end of... Oh no, I'm sorry. We'll bring you more stories from around the world.
Survivors of sexual abuses by priests met with Vatican officials on Wednesday. It comes a day before the start of a conference on abuse within the church. All the survivors at today's meetings expressed disappointment that the Pope did not come to the meeting. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi have announced new trade deals after a meeting in New Delhi on Wednesday. The two countries signed 5 major agreements on infrastructure, investment, tourism, housing and broadcasting.
We understand that the opportunities that India has in various fields is more than $100 billion in the coming 2 years. And we want that we both make investments that are beneficial and will achieve returns for both countries.
A French Cape patroller has died from his injuries after being caught in an avalanche in Switzerland. 4 people were pulled from the snow and taken to an army hospital where the patroller later died. Rescuers have called off their search after finding no more casualties.
Before we end, remember to tune in to Telesur this Sunday for the 3rd episode of our new documentary series, After War. The series shows the impact that U.S. military interventions have in at least 12 countries across the world.
نوعا ما يعني لا 3 ساعات بس.
انت بتحكي English, right?
Yeah.
Do you speak like really good English?
No, they just interrogated me. They interrogated me.
Why do they keep taking you? Why do they keep taking like your families and stuff?
I actually don't know, but it's usually like because of the demonstration and things.
I don't know if you already know what do you like to be when you are old. When I was your age, I wanted to be an archaeologist. You, what do you want to be? Have you already thought?
Businesswoman. Businesswoman.
Businesswoman. Wow.
Okay. Teacher for English. Teacher
wow.
for English. Lara, what do you want to be? Doctor. Doctor. Okay.
Jenna?
I want to be 5 things. 5 things? First thing, I'm going to study political science to know more about the governments around the world. Second thing, I'm going to be a journalist, of course. Third thing, I'm going to be an artist to send this message in a better way to the children. 4th thing, I'm going to be a fashion designer to design more of the Palestinian traditional dresses and make it the fashion of those years. And last thing, I'm going to be a football player in Barcelona to rise my country name higher.
And with this, we come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories in our website at telesurenglish.net. And don't forget to follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.